Rain hammered against the bulletproof windows of the Evanston townhouse as Park Dae-hyun pressed his palm against the glass, watching the impossible scene unfold below. His security team had gone silent behind him, 12 men trained to eliminate threats, now frozen by something none of them understood. In his courtyard, barefoot on wet stone, Zaria Coleman spun through the downpour like she was claiming back pieces of her soul. Water traced her movements, clinging to her dark skin, her natural curls wild and free. She laughed, actually laughed, arms stretched toward the storm as if embracing every drop. "Sir," Vincent, his head of security, whispered urgently, "should we—" "No." Dae-hyun's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Nobody moves." This was the woman who prepared his meals in silence, who cared for his young cousin Talia with gentle efficiency, who made herself invisible in his world of power and violence. Yet here she was, dancing like she owned the night itself. When she finally noticed him watching, her joy shattered into mortification. She wrapped her arms around herself, backing toward the house. "I'm so sorry," she called out, voice breaking. "I didn't know anyone could see—" But Dae-hyun was already moving, stepping into the rain without hesitation. What he did next would change everything between them, and leave his entire organization questioning everything they thought they knew about their untouchable boss. Welcome to Korean Mafia lovers. Tonight's story will show you what happens when a powerful man sees a woman's true self for the first time. Comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring you these incredible love stories every week. 3 hours earlier, the Park family townhouse in Evanston hummed with its usual controlled efficiency. Dae-hyun moved through the main floor like a shadow in an expensive suit, checking security feeds, reviewing reports from his legitimate businesses. At 35, he had spent the last 3 years methodically dismantling his family's criminal empire, replacing blood money with clean investments. The transition was almost complete. Almost. "Uncle Dae," 7-year-old Talia burst through the living room, her school uniform slightly rumpled, backpack sliding off one shoulder. "Zaria taught me how to make paper cranes today, and she said we could hang them in my room like stars." Dae-hyun caught his cousin as she launched herself at his legs, her enthusiasm a bright spot in his carefully ordered world. Since taking guardianship after his uncle's death, Talia had become his anchor to something beyond the empire, something worth protecting. "That sounds beautiful," he said, smoothing her dark hair. "Where is Zaria now?" "Kitchen. She's making that soup you like." Talia grinned. "She always makes extra when you look tired." Before Dae-hyun could respond, Zaria appeared in the doorway, her presence as quiet as always. 29 years old with deep brown skin and intelligent eyes, she wore a simple navy dress and cream cardigan, her natural hair pulled into a neat bun. Everything about her radiated competence and care. "Talia, homework first," she said gently, then glanced at Dae-hyun. "Dinner will be ready in an hour, Mr. Park." "Thank you." He studied her face, noting the slight shadows under her eyes, the way she held herself like she was trying to take up less space. "You've been working long hours lately. Take tomorrow off." Something flickered across her expression, surprise, maybe gratitude, but she simply nodded. "I'll make sure everything is prepared beforehand." "That's not necessary. The staff can handle—" "It's fine," she said quickly, already turning away. "I don't mind." Dae-hyun watched her guide Talia toward the stairs, their quiet conversation fading as they climbed. In 6 months of employment, Zaria had never asked for anything, never complained, never stepped out of her carefully defined role. She was the perfect employee, invisible, efficient, forgettable. So why did he find himself noticing the way she hummed softly while cooking? The way she lit up when Talia laughed, the careful distance she maintained from everyone in his world. His phone buzzed. Vincent's name flashed on the screen. "Brooks is here," his security chief reported. "Conference room." Dae-hyun straightened his tie and headed downstairs to the basement level, where his remaining business required attention. Marcus Brooks, his financial advisor, sat at the polished table surrounded by documents, the final pieces of his empire's transformation. "The Riverside development is clean," Brooks reported, sliding contracts across the table. All funding traced to legitimate sources. The gaming licenses came through for the casino project. By year's end, you'll be completely above board. And the soul connections. Severed. Your cousin Noor handled the final transfers. The old guard isn't happy, but they can't touch you now. Dae-hyun signed the documents with practiced efficiency. Each signature was another step away from his father's legacy of violence, another move toward something resembling a normal life. There's one more thing, Brooks said carefully. Wesley Kim has been asking questions about your domestic arrangements. Meaning? The nanny. Some of the old crew think it's strange, you taking such personal interest in household staff. They're wondering if there's more to it. Dae-hyun's pen stilled. My personal life isn't their concern. Of course not. I'm just saying, perception matters, especially now, when you're trying to establish legitimacy. The warning was clear. Any hint of impropriety, any suggestion that his judgment was compromised, could undermine everything he'd worked to build. Dae-hyun had navigated worse threats, but this felt different, more personal. Noted, he said simply. An hour later, dinner was served in the main dining room. Korean-style short ribs with perfectly seasoned vegetables, the kind of meal that spoke of attention and care. Zarya served silently, refilling water glasses, ensuring Talia ate her vegetables. She moved like a ghost through his world, present but not really there. After Talia was tucked into bed, Dae-hyun found himself restless. The house felt too quiet, too controlled. He loosened his tie and walked to the living room windows, watching rain begin to fall on the empty street. That's when he saw her. At first he thought his eyes were playing tricks, but no. There was Zarya, stepping out into the courtyard without shoes, her cardigan already darkening with moisture. She stood still for a moment, face turned toward the sky, and then she began to move. It wasn't performance, it wasn't for anyone. It was pure, unguarded expression, the kind of freedom Dae-hyun had forgotten existed. She swayed and spun, her movements fluid and natural, like she was having a conversation with the storm itself. Behind him, his security team gathered, uncertain how to respond to this breach of protocol. But Dae-hyun couldn't look away. For the first time in months, maybe years, he was seeing something real. Sir? Vincent's voice carried a note of confusion that Dae-hyun had never heard before. Should we intervene? The question hung in the air as Zarya continued her dance, oblivious to the audience gathering behind the windows. Her movements were becoming bolder now, more confident, as if the rain was washing away layers of careful restraint. No, Dae-hyun said quietly. Nobody moves. But he couldn't stay still himself. Something about the scene pulled at him, the pure joy on her face, the way she moved like she was finally, completely herself. In his world of calculated gestures and hidden meanings, her honesty was startling. When she finally noticed him through the glass, the transformation was instant and heartbreaking. Her arms dropped to her sides, her face crumpling with embarrassment as she hurried toward the house. Dae-hyun was moving before he realized it, crossing the room and opening the door to step into the rain. Water immediately soaked through his expensive shirt, but he barely noticed. "I'm so sorry," Zarya was saying, her voice barely audible over the downpour. "I thought everyone was asleep. I didn't mean to." "You don't need to apologize," he said, keeping his voice gentle despite the authority that usually colored every word. "You weren't doing anything wrong." She looked up at him, rain streaming down her face, her carefully maintained composure completely shattered. "I was being unprofessional. I should have. You were being human." The words seemed to surprise them both. Zarya stared at him, searching his face for some sign that this was a test, a trap. But Dae-hyun had never been more sincere. "I dance when I feel invisible," she said suddenly, the admission slipping out like she couldn't hold it back. "It's the only time I remember I exist." The honesty in her voice hit him harder than any business rival's threat ever had. Here was a woman who spent her days caring for others, making herself small and unobtrusive, and the only way she could reclaim herself was in stolen moments under the cover of rain. "This is your home too," he said. "You shouldn't have to hide." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. People say things like that, but they don't mean it, not really. I don't say things I don't mean. Something shifted in her expression, a flicker of hope quickly suppressed. You don't know me, Mr. Park. Not really. Then tell me. The simple invitation seemed to catch her off guard. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how the rain had made her dress cling to her skin, how her hair had escaped its careful styling. I should go inside, Hwai, she said. Get dry. Dae-hyun nodded, but he didn't move. Zarya. She paused at the door, looking back. Tomorrow, take the day off. Really off. No meal prep, no cleaning. Just be. I don't know how to do that anymore, she admitted quietly. Then learn. That night, Dae-hyun couldn't sleep. He found himself thinking about the way Zarya had moved in the rain, the freedom he'd glimpsed before she remembered who she was supposed to be. In his world, everyone wore masks, himself included. But for those few minutes, she had been completely, authentically herself. The next morning, he made a series of calls. I need additional household staff, he told his assistant. Full-time cook, part-time cleaner, background checks, full benefits. Is there a problem with current arrangements, sir? No. I'm expanding them. The second call was to his architect. The sunroom on the second floor. I want it converted. Hardwood floors, mirrors, sound system. Professional grade. What type of space, sir? Dance studio. There was a pause. Dance studio. You heard correctly. I want it finished by the end of the week. The third call was the hardest. Wesley Kim answered on the first ring, his voice carrying the casual arrogance of someone who'd never quite accepted Dae-hyun's authority. Heard you're making some interesting personnel decisions, Wesley said without preamble. My household arrangements aren't your concern. Everything about your image is my concern. We're at a delicate stage, Dae-hyun. The legitimate businesses are just taking hold. Any suggestion of impropriety? There is no impropriety. A young, attractive woman living in your house. People talk. Let them. Dae-hyun's voice went cold. But if I hear that talk has reached Zarya, if she feels uncomfortable in any way because of gossip, I'll hold you personally responsible. The threat was clear. Wesley's laugh was nervous. Of course, I'm just looking out for your interests. Then focus on the business. Leave my personal life alone. When Zarya returned from her day off, which she'd spent at the library and a small cafe, she told Talia later, she found the house subtly transformed. A new cook, Mrs. Chen, was preparing dinner. A cleaning service had been arranged for twice weekly. Mr. Park. Zarya found him in his office, surrounded by legitimate business documents. I don't understand. Did I do something wrong? The opposite. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. You've been working 7 days a week since you started. That's not sustainable. I don't mind. I do. He leaned back, studying her face. When was the last time you did something just for yourself? Something that had nothing to do with taking care of others? The question seemed to stump her. I don't remember. That's a problem. Mr. Park, I appreciate the thought, but I don't need... There's something else. He stood, moving to the window. Follow me. He led her upstairs to the sunroom she'd passed countless times, but never entered. When he opened the door, she gasped. The space had been completely transformed. Polished hardwood floors gleamed under soft lighting. Mirrors lined one wall, reflecting the garden view from the windows. A state-of-the-art sound system was discreetly installed in the corners. This is yours, he said simply, holding out a key. No conditions, no expectations, just yours. Zarya stared at the room, then at the key, then at him. I don't understand. Why would you... Because joy shouldn't have to hide in the rain. Her breath caught. For a moment, he thought she might cry. Instead, she straightened her shoulders, falling back into her professional demeanor. This is too much. I can't accept... It's not a gift, he said gently. It's an acknowledgement. You exist, Zarya. You matter. This house should reflect that. She took the key with trembling fingers, and for the first time since he'd known her, She looked directly into his eyes without flinching. "Thank you," she whispered. That evening, soft music drifted down from the sunroom. Dae-hyun found himself pausing in his work, listening to the sound of someone reclaiming themselves one movement at a time. 3 weeks later, the house had settled into new rhythms. Zaria still maintained her professional boundaries during the day, but evenings belonged to her. The sound of music from the sunroom had become as familiar as the security system's quiet hum. Dae-hyun found himself timing his work to coincide with her practice sessions, not to intrude but simply to know she was there, claiming the space he'd given her. It was a small rebellion against the careful distance that defined every other relationship in his life. "Uncle Dae, can I learn to dance too?" Talia asked one evening over dinner. "Zaria's teaching me some moves, but I want to be as good as she is." "What kind of dancing does Zaria do?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Everything." Talia's eyes lit up. "Ballet and jazz and something she calls contemporary. She says dancing tells stories without words." Dae-hyun glanced at Zaria, who was carefully cutting Talia's chicken into smaller pieces. "Is that what you studied? Dance?" For a moment, her hands stilled. "A long time ago. Before." She trailed off, then forced a smile. It was a different life. What changed? The question slipped out before he could stop it. Zaria's expression shuttered. Life, responsibilities, reality. But Talia, oblivious to the adult undercurrents, pressed on. Zaria was going to be in a real company. She showed me videos of dancers in New York and said she almost got to dance there. "Talia," Zaria said quietly, a warning in her voice. "What happened?" Dae-hyun asked gently. "My mother got sick." The words came out flat, matter of fact. Someone had to take care of her. Someone had to work. Dreams don't pay medical bills. The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. Dae-hyun knew about sacrificing dreams for family obligations, about choosing duty over desire. But he'd had power, resources, options. Zaria had given up everything. "I'm sorry," he said. She looked surprised. It's life. People make choices. Some people have choices made for them. Their eyes met across the table, and something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. The acknowledgement that they both understood the weight of responsibility, the cost of putting others first. Later that evening, Dae-hyun was reviewing security reports when Vincent knocked on his office door. "Sir, we have a situation." Dae-hyun looked up from his laptop. "What kind of situation?" "Wesley Kim is here with Noor. They're asking for a family meeting." Dae-hyun's jaw tightened. Family meetings were never good news, especially when Wesley was involved. Conference room 5 minutes. The basement conference room felt smaller, with Wesley's presence filling it. At 42, Wesley carried himself with the swagger of someone who'd never quite accepted that the old ways were ending. Beside him, Noor looked uncomfortable. She'd been Dae-hyun's ally in the transition to legitimacy. "We need to talk," Wesley said without preamble, "about your household situation." "I thought I made my position clear." "You did, but things have escalated." Wesley slid a tablet across the table. "These photos were taken last week." Dae-hyun glanced at the screen and felt his blood turn to ice. The images showed Zaria in the sunroom, dancing, completely unaware she was being watched. They were taken from outside, through the windows, with a telephoto lens. "Who took these?" His voice was deadly quiet. "Does it matter? They exist, and if we found them, others will too." "Answer the question." Wesley shifted uncomfortably. "A private investigator. Someone's been watching your house. Who hired him?" "We don't know yet. But Dae-hyun, you have to see how this looks. A young woman alone in your house in what appears to be intimate circumstances. She's dancing, in a room I converted for her use. That's not how it will be interpreted." Wesley leaned forward. "You're trying to build a legitimate empire. These photos could destroy everything. Suggest impropriety. Poor judgment. There is no impropriety. But there's attachment." The voice came from Noor, quiet but certain. "Isn't there?" Dae-hyun looked at his cousin, seeing the concern in her eyes. Noor had been his closest ally, the one person he trusted completely, if she was worried. "My feelings aren't the issue," he said carefully. "They are if they're making you vulnerable." Wesley pulled up another photo, this one showing Dae-hyun standing in the doorway watching Zaria dance. "Look at your face, Dae-hyun. Look at how you're looking at her." The image was damning in its honesty. Even Dae-hyun could see what Wesley meant. The expression on his face was soft, unguarded, completely unlike the controlled mask he wore everywhere else. "Someone's building a case," Wesley continued. "Photos, timelines, witness statements. They're trying to suggest that your judgment is compromised, that you're making decisions based on personal feelings rather than business sense." "What do you want me to do?" Dae-hyun's voice was ice. "Distance yourself professionally. Let her go, or at minimum establish clear boundaries. Show that you're still in control." "And if I refuse?" Wesley's smile was thin. "Then you risk everything you've built. Your legitimacy, your businesses, your reputation. Is one woman worth all of that?" The question hung in the air like a threat. Dae-hyun stared at the photos, seeing Zaria's joy captured and weaponized, turned into something ugly and manipulative. "I need time to think." "You don't have time," Wesley said. "Whoever's behind this is moving fast. You need to act now before this becomes public." After they left, Dae-hyun sat alone in the conference room, staring at the photos. In them, Zaria looked free, beautiful, completely herself. The woman who'd been invisible for so long was finally visible, and now that visibility was being used against them both. Upstairs, he could hear music from the sunroom. Zaria was dancing again, unaware that her private moments had been stolen, that her joy was being used as a weapon. For the first time since beginning his transition to legitimacy, Dae-hyun wondered if some prices were too high to pay. The music stopped abruptly. Through his office window he saw a black sedan pulling away from the curb, the same model that had been in the surveillance photos. Someone was still watching, and now they knew he knew. The confrontation came at dawn. Dae-hyun was in his office, having barely slept, when Vincent burst through the door without knocking, a breach of protocol that immediately put him on high alert. "Sir, we have a problem. Multiple vehicles approaching, armed." Before Dae-hyun could respond, the sound of shattering glass echoed through the house. Not windows, something else. His blood ran cold as he realized what it was. The sunroom. He was moving before Vincent could stop him, taking the stairs 3 at a time. The door to Zaria's studio hung open, revealing a scene of deliberate destruction. Mirrors lay in glittering fragments across the floor. The sound system had been torn from the walls. Spray paint covered the windows in crude, threatening messages. But it was the photos scattered across the destroyed hardwood that made his hands clench into fists. Dozens of them, Zaria dancing, laughing, completely unaware she was being watched. Some were circled in red marker, others had crude words scrawled across them. "They were gone before we could respond," Vincent reported, slightly out of breath. "Professional job. In and out in under 3 minutes." Dae-hyun knelt among the wreckage, picking up one of the photos. It showed Zaria mid-spin, her face radiant with joy. Someone had written whore across it in black marker. The rage that filled him was unlike anything he'd felt in years, not the cold calculation of business, but something primal and protective. "Sir?" Vincent's voice seemed to come from very far away. "What are your orders?" Before Dae-hyun could answer, he heard footsteps in the hallway. Zaria appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, her face going white as she took in the destruction. "Oh my God," she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. "What happened?" Dae-hyun stood quickly, moving to block her view of the photos, but she'd already seen them. Her eyes went wide with horror and humiliation. Those are pictures of me." Her voice was barely audible. "Someone was watching me." "Zaria, how long?" She looked at him with something approaching accusation. "How long have they been watching?" "I don't know, we just found out yesterday." "Yesterday?" Her voice cracked. "You knew about this yesterday and didn't tell me? I was trying to protect you." "By lying to me?" She stepped into the room, glass crunching under her bare feet. By letting me keep dancing here while someone was taking pictures. I was handling it. Handling it. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. This is what handling it looks like? Dae-hyun reached for her, but she stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. The gesture reminded him painfully of that first night in the rain, when she'd tried to make herself invisible. "I need to pack," she said quietly. "I need to leave." "No." The word came out sharper than he intended. "You're not going anywhere. Look around." Her composure finally cracked, tears streaming down her face. "Look what being here has done. Someone violated my privacy, destroyed the one space where I felt safe, and it's because of me, because I work for you. This isn't your fault. Isn't it?" She picked up one of the photos, her hands shaking. "I should have known better. I should have kept my distance, stayed professional, but I let myself believe." She trailed off, shaking her head. "Believe what? That I mattered, that I was more than just the help." Her laugh was bitter. "God, I'm so stupid." "You're not stupid, and you do matter." "To who?" She looked at him with eyes full of pain. "To you? Because if I mattered to you, you would have told me the truth. You would have let me make my own choices instead of deciding what I could and couldn't handle." The accusation hit home because it was true. He had made decisions for her, just like everyone else in her life. Despite his good intentions, he treated her like someone who needed protection rather than someone who deserved honesty. "You're right," he said quietly. "I should have told you. It doesn't matter now." She turned toward the door. "I'll be gone by tonight." "Where will you go?" "That's not your concern anymore." But it was his concern. The thought of Zarya leaving, of her disappearing back into invisibility because of his world's violence, was unbearable. "Stay," he said. "Please, let me fix this." "You can't fix this." She gestured at the destroyed room. "You can't fix what this represents. I'm a black woman who works for a Korean crime boss. People will always see that as something dirty, something wrong, and maybe they're right." "They're not right, aren't they?" She faced him fully, her eyes blazing with hurt and anger. "What is this, Dae-hyun? What are we? Because I let myself think there was something real here. But you have a whole life, a whole world that I'm not part of, and I'm just the nanny who got ideas above her station. That's not what this is. Then what is it? Tell me what this is, because I don't know anymore." The question hung between them, demanding an answer he wasn't sure he could give. Not because he didn't know. He'd known for weeks, maybe since that first night in the rain. But saying it out loud would change everything, would make them both targets in ways that went beyond surveillance photos and broken glass. Before he could find the words, his phone rang. Wesley's name flashed on the screen. "Don't answer it," Zarya said quietly, but he already had. "Turn on the news," Wesley said without preamble. "Channel 7, now." Dae-hyun grabbed the remote from the destroyed sound system, turning on the small TV that had somehow survived the attack. The morning news filled the screen, and his blood turned to ice. Alleged connections between local businessman Park Dae-hyun and organized crime activities. Sources close to the investigation suggest that Mr. Park's recent lifestyle choices may indicate compromised judgment. The photos appeared on screen, not the intimate ones from the sunroom, but carefully selected images that told a story. Dae-hyun and Zarya in the garden, him watching her through the window, her entering and leaving the house at various times. The woman in question, identified as Zarya Coleman, has been employed as a live-in nanny, but sources suggest her role may extend beyond childcare. Zarya made a sound like she'd been punched. On screen, her face appeared, a photo taken without her knowledge, probably from the same surveillance operation. The news anchor's voice continued, clinical and devastating, raising questions about Mr. Park's fitness to operate legitimate businesses in the Chicago area. Federal investigators are reportedly reviewing his recent activities. Dae-hyun turned off the TV, but the damage was done. Zarya stood frozen, her face grey with shock. "They're destroying both of us," she whispered. "And for what? Because I danced?" Because you were kind to me. This isn't over. Yes, it is. She looked at him with something like pity. It's over, Dae-hyun. Whatever this was, whatever it might have been, it's over. She walked out of the destroyed room, leaving him standing among the wreckage of the space he'd created for her joy. Through the broken windows, he could see news vans pulling up to the curb. The war for his legitimacy had begun. And the first casualty was the woman he'd realized he couldn't live without. The siege lasted 3 days. News vans lined the street like vultures. Reporters shouted questions whenever anyone entered or left the house. Federal agents arrived with warrants, searching through files that Dae-hyun knew were clean, but understanding the message. His transition to legitimacy was under attack. Through it all, Zarya moved through the house like a ghost, packing her belongings with quiet efficiency. She avoided the main windows, kept Talia away from the news coverage, maintained her professional demeanor even as her world crumbled around her. Dae-hyun watched her from a distance, respecting her need for space while his security team worked to identify the source of the attack. The investigation was revealing a web of old enemies, crime families who resented his legitimate success, competitors who wanted to undermine his businesses, politicians who'd been paid to look the other way and now felt betrayed. But the mastermind remained hidden. On the third evening, as Zarya finished packing her last suitcase, Talia appeared in her doorway. "Are you really leaving?" the little girl asked, her voice small. "I have to, sweetheart." Zarya knelt to Talia's level, her composure finally cracking. "But it's not because I don't love you. You know that, right?" "Is it because of the bad people on TV?" "It's because sometimes adults make things complicated, and I need to go somewhere safe. Uncle Dae is safe. He protects us. He can't protect everyone from everything." But even as she said it, Zarya knew it wasn't entirely true. In 3 days of chaos, Dae-hyun had shielded her from the worst of it. Reporters who tried to approach her were turned away. Her name was kept out of follow-up stories. When federal agents wanted to question her, his lawyers ensured she was treated with respect. He was protecting her the only way he knew how, by taking the heat himself. That night, as she prepared to leave in the morning, Zarya found herself in the destroyed sunroom one last time. Someone had cleaned up the glass, but the space remained gutted, empty. The mirrors that had reflected her joy were gone. The floor where she'd reclaimed herself was scarred and broken. She was so lost in thought that she didn't hear footsteps until Dae-hyun spoke. "I found them." She turned, seeing him silhouetted in the doorway. He looked exhausted, his usually perfect appearance rumpled and worn. "Found who?" "The people behind this, all of it." He stepped into the room, careful of the damaged floor. It was Wesley, working with the Torino family. They never accepted my transition. They wanted to prove I was still vulnerable, still the same man who could be controlled through violence and intimidation. "Wesley?" Zarya felt a chill run through her. "Your own family?" "Greed makes people do ugly things. He thought if he could discredit me, force me back into the old ways, he'd have more power." Dae-hyun's voice was flat, emotionless. He hired the surveillance, orchestrated the break-in, fed information to the media. What happens now? Now he faces the consequences. The federal investigation will find evidence of his real crimes, the ones he committed trying to frame me. The Torinos will discover that their new ally has been feeding information to law enforcement for months. Zarya shuddered. She didn't need him to spell out what that meant in his world. "And us?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "There is no us." His words were quiet, but final. "There can't be. Not if you want a normal life." "What if I don't want a normal life?" The question surprised them both. Dae-hyun looked at her sharply, searching her face. "For you don't know what you're saying, don't I?" She stepped closer, her heart pounding. "For 29 years I've played it safe. I've been responsible, practical, invisible. I gave up my dreams to take care of my mother. I took jobs that paid the bills instead of following my passion. I made myself small so other people would be comfortable. Zarya. And then you saw me dancing in the rain. You saw me, Dae-hyun, not the nanny, not the help, not the woman who's supposed to fade into the background. You saw me." Her voice broke. Do you know how long it's been since someone saw me? This world will destroy you. This world already tried to destroy me. They took pictures of my joy and turned them into weapons. They called me names, questioned my integrity, made me feel ashamed of the first happiness I'd felt in years. She took another step closer. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. You're leaving tomorrow. Because you're letting me go. Because you've decided what's best for me, just like everyone else in my life. Her eyes blazed with sudden anger. I'm tired of other people making my choices. I'm tired of being protected from my own life. You don't understand the cost. Then tell me, she was shouting now, all her careful control finally snapping. Stop deciding what I can and can't handle and tell me the truth. What is this between us? What are you so afraid of? The silence stretched between them, heavy with 3 days of unspoken words. Finally, Dae-hyun spoke, his voice raw with honesty. I'm afraid that loving you will get you killed. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Zarya felt her breath catch, her heart stopping and starting again. Loving me? Yes. He looked at her with eyes full of pain. I love the way you dance like no one's watching. I love how you make Talia laugh. I love your strength, your kindness, the way you see beauty in small things. I love that you chose to trust me even when you had every reason not to. Dae-hyun, but love isn't enough. Not in my world. The people who want to hurt me will always use you to do it. Tonight proved that. Tonight proved that we're stronger than they thought. She reached for his hands, finding them trembling. They tried to break us apart and failed. They tried to make me ashamed of caring about you and failed. They tried to destroy something beautiful and failed. This time. What about next time? Then we face it together. She interlaced their fingers, the gesture intimate and sure. I'm not asking you to protect me from everything. I'm asking you to let me choose my own risks. And if I can't, then you don't really see me at all. You see someone who needs saving instead of someone who's already saved herself. The truth of her words hit him like a physical blow. She was right. He had been trying to protect her, to make decisions for her, to keep her safe in a cage of his own making. But Zarya Coleman wasn't someone who needed saving. She was someone who'd survived loss, sacrifice, and invisibility, and emerged stronger. The Korean Mafia boss saw the black nanny dancing in the rain, he said quietly, remembering the headlines. What he did next left everyone silent. What did you do next? She asked, stepping closer until they were almost touching. I fell in love with her courage. And what did she do? She chose to love him back. When he kissed her, it was with the desperation of a man who'd almost lost everything that mattered. When she kissed him back, it was with the fierce joy of a woman who'd finally stopped hiding. Outside, the news vans were already pulling away, chasing newer scandals. The federal investigation would clear his name within the week. Wesley would face justice for his crimes. But in the destroyed sunroom, where Zarya had once danced alone, two people chose each other despite the odds, despite the risks, despite a world that would never understand. I'll rebuild this room, Dae-hyun said against her lips. We'll rebuild it, she corrected. Together. And for the first time in years, the future felt like a dance worth learning. Years later, the sunroom had been transformed again, not just rebuilt, but expanded. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a garden where Talia, now 13, practiced ballet alongside younger students. The Zarya Coleman Dance Academy occupied the entire second floor of what had once been just a family home. Dae-hyun watched from his office as his wife led a class of young black girls through a contemporary routine, her movements still as fluid and joyful as they'd been that first night in the rain. The ring on her finger caught the afternoon light as she demonstrated a turn, her laughter mixing with her students' voices. Mr. Park, his assistant Brooks, appeared in the doorway. The community center dedication is in an hour. Thank you. Dae-hyun straightened his tie, checking his reflection in the window. At 40, he looked more relaxed than he had in his younger years, the hard edges softened by genuine happiness. The Park Foundation's newest project was a performing arts center in Zarya's old neighborhood, offering free classes to children who might otherwise never have access to dance, music, or theater. It was funded entirely by his legitimate businesses, real estate, technology investments, the casino that had become Chicago's most successful entertainment destination. The criminal empire was a memory now, replaced by something better, a legacy built on creation rather than destruction. Ready, Zarya appeared beside him, having changed into an elegant navy dress that complemented his charcoal suit. Her hair was styled in natural curls that framed her face, and she wore the confident smile of a woman who'd never forgotten how to dance. Always, when I'm with you. They walked downstairs together, where Talia waited with their security detail. Smaller now, more discreet, but still necessary. Some threats never completely disappeared. "Can I give the first speech?" Talia asked, bouncing slightly with excitement. "I've been practicing." "It's your aunt's day," Dae-hyun said gently, "but you can introduce her." "Aunt Zarya's speeches are better anyway," Talia grinned. "She actually makes people cry happy tears." In the car, Zarya reached for Dae-hyun's hand, their fingers interlacing with the easy intimacy of a couple who'd chosen each other every day for years. "Nervous?" he asked. "Excited," she corrected. "Do you remember what you told me that first night? That joy shouldn't have to hide." "I remember. Today we're making sure it never has to." The community center was packed with families, local officials, and reporters, but these were friendly faces now, documenting success rather than scandal. When Zarya took the stage, her voice carried clearly through the crowd. "Dance saved my life," she began, "not just as an art form, but as a reminder that I existed, that I mattered, that I had something beautiful to offer the world. Today we're giving that gift to the next generation." Dae-hyun watched from the side of the stage, remembering the woman who danced alone in the rain, thinking no one could see her. Now she stood before hundreds of people, completely visible, completely herself. After the ceremony, as they walked through the new studios filled with children already claiming the space as their own, Zarya squeezed his hand. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what? For seeing me, for choosing me, for building a world where dancing in the rain isn't something to hide. Thank you for teaching me that some things are worth any risk." As they left the community center, rain began to fall, a gentle spring shower that sent most people hurrying for cover. But Dae-hyun and Zarya walked slowly to their car, faces turned toward the sky, remembering the night that changed everything. In the distance, thunder rolled like applause. "Thank you for staying until the end." Korean Mafia Lovers has many more passionate stories waiting for you. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Your support helps us create these incredible love stories that celebrate the beauty of unexpected connections.